Hi, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jen Behnke.
And I'm Kyle Behnke.
And we're a married couple who manages
a business
and a family. Hey, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into our second episode on our show, Married in Business. Today, we wanted to kind of go into why we wanted to start the business.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of motivation or a lot of things that motivate somebody to start a business, become an entrepreneur. And today we're going to kind of share what motivated us and each of us in our journey. And especially me, I think I was really the driver to start a business in our family. So we wanted to kind of cover that because I think that's a really big, important part of why you're starting a business. You want to start a business for the right things and
the right reasons.
Yeah, have a plan for what you're looking for in your life. You really gotta. I think with starting with any business, you got to kind of start with your end goal in mind, and then work backwards from there. And so, all that was in my process, growing up, and kind of seeing some different things. So we want to talk about some of those topics, and then also kind of talk about some stuff that happened right before we started the business that really kind of put us over the edge and saying, okay, we're doing this. This is going to happen now. We're going to make it happen. And kind of how we moved through those life stages there.
So we wanted to talk about how we went in depth and how we decided to take those steps to start our business. As we mentioned in the first episode, things were hard, and they were really hard that first year our son was born. And then in 2015, we were getting back on the right track, getting in a good place. I really like my job. Mm-hmm. Kyle will talk about his experience, but unfortunately, in April, my mom passed away very suddenly. And then later that year, Kyle was talking about the trip we took to New Jersey. My mom's dad passed away. And the year before that, when James was just under a year, your grandmother passed away. So we had all these big hard events that we went through, and we just felt like now is the time. If we stay with what we're doing, the current jobs that we have, corporate America, nothing's going to change. We might still be doing that today. But we said, let's take one step in faith. Let's open that door, and if the door is going to open, then we'll walk through it. And we just took all these little steps, and we just kind of changed our path with taking all these little steps to get to where we wanted to go.
But those little steps, it is little steps along the way. I would say my entrepreneurial journey goes all the way back to probably somewhere in college, first, second, third year of college. I'm starting to see things. And then right before that, so my dad, this is one of the things that was always in the back of my mind is I'm, going through college, looking for what do I want to do? What kind of jobs do I want to take? Or, how do I want to do these things? And my father, he would always have long tenures at places, and then he'd end up, he's fairly high up, and then a clash would come to with management. And he's like, no, I really feel like this is how it should be. Well,
he has a very high standard.
Yeah. Well, typically that scenario always plays out the same way. The higher up wins, and
the new person
and then the lower person that might clash with them, they get moved out of the way. And that happened to my dad 2 or 3 times. And seeing that happen, I was like, man, I do not want to have my family be at the whim of a job and me having to maybe bend
uproot your whole family and move halfway across the country as well.
And that literally happened with my dad. Luckily for me, my dad actually worked 2 or 3 hours away from our home my last 2 years of high school, so I didn't have to switch high schools because we had a lot going on. I was playing football, I was doing, having to switch, go to a different scenario. I mean, there's, that was great that my parents did that, but I know it was tough on my parents. And so just seeing all those different things, the jobs being pushed out, what you have to do, the work, granted, that also gave me the work ethic. I saw what you kind of have to do. You just kind of,
put your head down.
You always just kind of put your head down and do stuff in our family, on my side of the family. And so, seeing those things,
Mine too.
and then so that was always in the back of my mind going through this. And so then, going through college, got some jobs, kind of seeing that, man, you got to play those office politics, man. I also hate.
You weren't good with office politics.
I'm not playing office politics. There was one time actually when the job I had right before, actually 2 jobs, I made major faux pas when somebody asked me. I'm at a meeting with one of my first jobs. I'm at a meeting with a vice president's there, and he's a guy that probably would have hired me to go, do some other stuff. And he asked me, he goes, "Oh, you're getting your MBA, so what do you want to do when you get done?" And I was kind of like, I'm not really sure yet. Consulting sounds pretty cool, and I was just giving an honest answer, and I didn't think about, oh, you want to do consulting? He was kind of like, you don't want to work for us?
Yeah.
You're done with your MBA? And I was like...
You kind of were like, I'm moving on. I'm out.
Like, well, there goes that door.
Is not with you.
And, you put my foot in the mouth there, and then, even there was a couple other times when, the corporate job, and you're doing something that you think is a good thing, and I was at a trade show.
Oh, yeah.
I was at a trade show. This is a job before we started business. I was at a trade show one day, and a stock analyst is there. And
reporter comes in.
He's literally a reporter. He starts asking me questions about the company, and I was pretty well versed on our company website. I'd read everything, so I literally gave him all the canned answers that were already on the website. Well, then I come back, and I'm thinking, well, hey, I can tell him, hey, this is what this guy's asking. Maybe I can get some brownie points.
They were so pissed.
And so then I ended up getting in trouble. They're like, "Why are you talking to people?" And I'm
you
like,
are not authorized to talk on behalf of the company.
I said everything that was in the, obviously they can't prove that. They just hear that. So next thing you know, the director, like the guy right below the chief marketing officer, is getting a report of me doing something, and I'm like, oh man, it's like this totally backfired. So those are 2 big examples there. And actually, that same guy I met him at a club one time. We were at like a country club event, and he happened to be there, and he was there with. I was like, "Oh, are these your grandkids?" And he's like, "No, they're my kids." And so I was like, I was just totally out with that, So the office politics wasn't working out for me at all. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna do what I think's right. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna be independent. Basically, all my family's from Texas. And he kind of got that independent streak in us from that. And so those were a lot of things that played into it. I was like, man, I'm never going to rise above like a middle manager in corporate America, because I'm not going to do and say the right things. So, and then, I always just felt like there's better ways to do stuff. So, I'd always been looking for the right business, the right opportunity. And so finally, I come across this FedEx ground opportunity while I'm at my other job. I hear about it, and I start researching it, and get way down into it. And I kind of come to Jen with it maybe 3 or 4 months after I've been looking at it, and she's kind of like, trucking? What is trucking? And this kind of goes. This is a big premise.
I kind of want to talk about my background as well, because it was not in trucking or logistics.
One of my big principles with being an entrepreneur is you got to go with the opportunity and what your skill set is good at, and not necessarily what your dream job or dream business might be.
Well,
I know Jen loves art, and I love the other different stuff, but trucking was the opportunity that could provide us with a good income and get us going. It wasn't the perfect thing. It wasn't anything, but nothing's perfect. And so sometimes too, as an entrepreneur, you got to take that opportunity and realize it's a really good opportunity, and not be focused on, well, this isn't really what I want to do. It's like, well, even if you're an artist or somebody, if you're going to be the business owner, or you're a mechanic, you're a really good mechanic. If you're the business owner, at some point, you're no longer going to be doing what you love doing, because you now have to manage that business. And so that was my mindset too, is finding something that I was good at, it matched my skill sets, our skill sets, and then once you see those opportunities to take that business, then you can do that, and then you learn the business and things like that. And obviously, you still pick something that you kind of like. Like, we like trucks.
Yeah, I never dreamed of being a truck.
I'm a boy. I'm a grown up as a boy. Had toy trucks, all those things. So it was still interesting to me. But the opportunity was there, and we took it. And I think that's a big thing there. And it didn't match Jen's background, but there were things that did.
Let me talk about my background, because it could not be further from trucking. So growing up, I wanted to be an attorney. I mentioned in the other episode my dad is. And then I thought I'd, make a good judge. Always very straight arrow and black and white on right and wrong. And then I got to about a sophomore in college, and I realized I didn't want to be an attorney. Everyone who was in law school was like, it's terrible. I hate it. Don't do it unless you really, really want to. And I'm like, maybe I don't want to. Okay. So I changed my major to 3 minors in liberal arts. And then when I got out of college, it was 2007. I'm like, I'm going to get into commercial real estate. I got my real estate license. And then the economy tanks in commercial real estate and regular real estate, and the whole thing just kind of shut down. So I was working in commercial property management, and I got laid off at 3 different jobs in a row. One of the jobs, last in, last out. One of the jobs, the HR manager is literally like crying, I'm so sorry. Then my next boss, he was like, after you left, I got behind. I've never been able to catch up. So I got into some random jobs. I'll tell you, I was in sales. I was networking. Every job I've had, I think I got through networking, but I sold trailer hitches.
For some really shady people.
Yes, really shady people. I sold jewelry. I sold high-end apparel. And then I landed on this job at an awesome company. It was also a startup. I think when I started, I was one of like 9 people. And over the years, they've grown. They've been bought and sold a couple times. But great company. They were there for me when, I had all my trouble. They let me, work part-time. And then I was working on some special projects and things like that because I knew the company so well. So having that job, I was there 4.5 years. So that really gave me the stability to be like, hey, I can do this. I'm not some screw up who keeps getting laid off. This is something, I could believe in myself again. So that gave me the confidence to feel comfortable starting a business. Kyle handles, a lot of the day-to-day, organizing the drivers, the trips, the way he can keep track of which truck is which and where it is and who's driving it. He blows my mind on that. So I was able to take my background, a strong math background, people, all that. So I, head up finances and oversee HR and payroll and just all the in-betweens on the back office. We've become a good team, and that's one thing that's great about us is we have different strengths that are complete opposite, which is sometimes why we clash. But, Kyle will bring an idea up, and I'm very good at, I've worked a lot on not saying no, because my first instinct is overwhelmed with change. I don't always love it. So I've worked on, okay, well, let's think about that. Let's talk about it. We'll look into it to kind of stall, because a lot of times after he's done all this research, I think about it and it's a great idea. And so I have to adjust how I respond to things like that, because, that's why I married him. Smartest guy I'd ever met, wanted to build a family, did not know we were going to be, did not know we were going to be starting a company. When we were together, he was getting his MBA, and I was always been super proud of him. So when he talked about wanting to start a business, I knew he couldn't do it by himself, and I wanted to help fulfill that dream for him.
Yeah. So going back, I wanted to touch back on what you mentioned. Like, you had a really great work environment, coworkers, everything right before we started the business, and that it really helped you kind of get back on your feet, especially after all the troubles after James was born and everything there. But mine was kind of the opposite on the other end, and this is really the tipping point of what pushed us, or especially me, like, hey, I got to get out of here. I got to do something different. And I didn't have that. Without going into too much detail, I had, all of a sudden, our son's born. Jen's been in and out of the hospital with various things. And so I'm trying to manage literally a 2-week-old baby. I'd used up all my vacation because, I didn't have any parental leave. I didn't have the option.
Paternity leave wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah, paternity leave was not a thing back then. And so I didn't have any options. And so, we actually had to move into my parents' house. We moved from Woodstock all the way over to Buford, where my parents were living, for 3 months. So we had somebody to help watch our son, because that was the family that was able to help us out. And so we've got that going on, and then we've got doctor's appointments. And then there was actually an accident with our son when he's 2 months old that we had to deal with. And then there's more doctor's appointments, and there's still doctor's appointments and hospital visits with Jen and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there, and it was funny, in my department, there were maybe one or two other people other women that just had babies.
Oh, and she timed it. Remember how she timed it?
Yeah, and they timed it so they could get extra leave and all this stuff. And I'm sitting here like, well, no, my boss is like, no, you need to be in the office. You need to be here. You're out of vacation. You need to be here. And I'm just like, man, I'm worn out. I'm tired. I'm not really getting support at work.
And you wanted to work from home like 2 days a week. And then once you're quitting, then they're like, oh, why don't you work from home? You're like, I needed to work from home a year ago. Like, this is not helpful now. I can be everywhere. So,
I've had several bad bosses over the year, and if you guys are listening, sorry you're getting brought up here, but it's the truth. So, so I had that situation going on, and just unhappy. And I mean, at work, I know I wasn't providing great. I wasn't being a great employee at the time because we had literally so much stuff going on.
Well, you did that amazing project with like 1 million lines of data, so he was working.
That was a little bit after, but like in the heat of it, and then finally when things started finally dying down too, for me, it was kind of like the event's over. And I used to have this when I played football. When the season's over and you're like going, and all of a sudden things just stop. It really puts you in a tough spot. You're tired. You're trying to get rested back up, but then you're trying to pick other things back up. And so for that time period, I was worn out. I didn't really feel like I got the support I needed at work. I just tried to put my head down and get through it. But then this is all the time during then that I'm, doing the research on the business. Okay, we're going to make this happen. And then finally we kind of got to the point and things kind of opened up and we're like, all right, now's the time. Take the chance. And we did. And
we just kind of jumped in. It was kind of a perfect storm of starting your whole life over. Everything all kind of came to that point for both of us, I think.
My mom always had a phrase growing up, and she'll still say it from time to time. You might call it luck, but I don't always believe in luck. But she said, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And right at that point in, August, September of 2015, all the preparation I've been doing matched right up with the opportunity. And that's the time you got to jump. You can't second guess it. You can't think twice because it could be gone. We had to make this decision, this life-altering decision, in about
24 hours.
In less than 24 hours.
We literally, I said to the lady with FedEx, I was like, because she called me right away. I reached out to her. I blasted like 5 people on LinkedIn Premiere or whatever it was. And she called me within like 2 hours and she said, I wanted to call you because these routes are available, but they all come down tomorrow. And I was like, okay, well, when do you think you'll do the next one? And because I'm like, obviously we'll not be ready tomorrow. And she goes, well, they haven't done this before, and I don't know when they'll do it again. And honestly, I don't think they have. And
they might have done some,
a little bit.
In 2020 they might have, but that was 5 years after we'd started the business.
But he had done a lot of research on FedEx, and during that time in 2015, they were investing like $2 billion into their infrastructure, and they were expanding all these hubs, and they were really growing, and so they needed people, and he knew that because of all his research and his preparation that you had done. So sometimes you just have to jump in, and it's kind of like when a kid can't swim, they jump in and they'll figure out figure out how to get to shore.
Yeah, there's no perfect time. We could have been like, we could have definitely, and you come back to it, said, well, Jen's just gotten back on her feet. Is it really good to introduce this just huge life change when she's finally healthy again and ready to move forward? And we're like, well, no, it's got to happen now. If it doesn't happen now, it doesn't matter. Well, you got a newborn. We had a 1.5-year-old. He's still not sleeping through the night. How are you going to do that? Well, you know what? That was
didn't sleep through the night
that was
anyway.
Actually perfect because we stepped into a 24-hour business that had a lot of nighttime stuff. So believe it or not, it prepared me a little bit for that. But and we'll talk about that down the road. Of kind of the toll, some of the things you got to the business takes on you. But hey, it's tough and. But there's no perfect time. You just have to go in and we made it happen. And so I think that was a big lesson too about, the motivation, and plus everything else at the time, I think it was all a perfect storm where it was like, I'm so fed up with this other stuff. I don't care what I'm jumping into now, but I'm getting away from this other thing that I absolutely just don't want to do anymore. So that was the big moment, and that was the tipping point as far as the motivation to start a business was right there.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. We're just out of time, and we really appreciate you hearing about where we were, how we got there, what were those final steps to really push us over the edge in entrepreneurship. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Stay tuned for more episodes. We got a lot of great content coming up about starting a business, running it with your spouse. And if you like what you heard, you felt inspired, then hit the like and subscribe button and tune in for our next episodes.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.